Hello and welcome to the studio again. Today I have two very special people for my heart. And why is that? Because they are probably two of the most skilled operators I have ever met.
Wow.
And being so skilled in interventional cardiology gives them something which is unique, is that they're very down to earth, they're very modest. And that is what you get with Dr. Omar Götekin from Turkey and Dr. Hani Abdelhadi, who's now in Saudi Arabia, my dear friends. And to cut this long story short, so I'm going to ask each of you the same two questions, very brief. So we'll start from the left with Omar. Omar, you presented an amazing case, which was completely out of the box, about using DCB in a very calcific artery. But I just want you to tell the audience, because the data is there and everybody can go online and read the data. I want you to tell the audience, you, the PCI guru, Omar Götekin, what is the use of DCB in your daily practice? How do you use it?
So yeah, last 1.5 year, I use a lot, much more than stent actually in my routine practice. Yeah, now my number of DCB is much more than stent in monthly, for example. So I use a lot because we have routinely doing angiogram follow-up after 6 months. So in our practice, in my could say in lab, we have a great results. So that's why it's encouraging me to do more DCB therapy. So yeah, currently my number is quite high, DCB numbers.
Thank you. And that is exactly the purpose of this meeting, to show the different practices. Can I please ask you the same question? Hani Abdelhadi, very experienced interventional cardiologist. We know the data, but in your daily practice, in your own cath lab, what is the role of DCB at this point in time?
I think one of the biggest changes in my personal practice in the last 5 years is an increase in the adoption of DCBs in de novo coronary disease. You remember, if you go back a few years, we were just using it for in-stent restenosis, right? So we don't put more metal. But I'm finding, and in our cath lab, we're finding much better outcomes actually in de novo disease than in in-stent restenosis.
Excellent.
And obviously we're a bit selective, but we've not had many people come back with problems. The way you prepare, the way you treat it is slightly less aggressive than when you're doing stents. But I think there's definitely a role in both acute and in chronic coronary syndromes.
Excellent. Okay, question number 2. Totally different topic. Mechanical circulatory support, specifically the Impala. In your, again, we know the data. We've all seen danger shock. We know the place in the guidelines. We're not here to discuss the guidelines, but we're here to discuss, to get a window into the look of very senior interventional cardiologists. What do they do? So in your center, is the Impala use in cardiogenic shock only, or also in high-risk angioplasty? Does high risk mean that you anticipate that the procedure is going to be long, or is it anatomically based, like severe left main or 3-vessel disease? So how does the Impala and how does the mechanical circulatory support, if you use ECMO, fit in your practice?
Yeah, so actually currently we don't have Impala in our country. We have PulseCat instead of, and also we could of course obviously use ECMO for our high-risk patients. We are using ECMO in our high-risk patients. ECMO obviously just for the procedure, we cannot continue it after that. But for the procedure, for the high-risk procedure, now at the moment currently we use ECMO.
Right.
So in some patients, I have some experience with PulseCat, but mostly if needed, we use ECMO because we don't have Impala yet.
So have you actually been to the cath lab and then stopped and say, okay, let's put this patient on ECMO? Or do they call you if a patient is already on ECMO and needs a cardiac cath?
No, if you plan to do, if we have a high risk patients, right, ejection fraction is low, single vessel remaining, then in that case, we do ECMO beforehand, as Impala we do. So it's not, standby, we do it beforehand.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Do you have access to the
Yeah.
Impella?
Yeah, so I've got 2 Impellas on my shelf in my cath lab all the time. And it started off in COVID where we're using it quite often because we had a lot of high risk patients in COVID. I think there are 2 categories, right? So there's your chip case, high risk, low EF patients, where you would use it up front. And we would always want to use it up front because if you open the Impella when the patient's got into trouble and they're hypotensive and they're peri-arrest, it's too late. So, our current practice, we go with upfront in chip cases. In shock cases is a bit different. So I tend to do a right heart cath in shock. And I would do the PAPI to look at the right ventricular function, and we do the cardiac power output, and you look at both. So if the PAPI is impaired and the RV is impaired, we wouldn't go to Impella because you make the patient worse, right? Because you've got biventricular failure. You might need to give right ventricular support. You either go with ECMO or ECPella. But if we found that the PAPI is okay and the CPO is low, then we would go ahead and use Impella. And there are cases where I do the right heart cath and it steers me away from Impella. Where the CPO is okay and you can actually just titrate your inotropes. Remember, it's a very costly piece of equipment.
Yes.
It's about $30,000-$40,000.
Because I think the use of right heart cath and also the presence of a shock team before the procedure are it's not just the device. Basically, that's the message I got from you, and that's exactly what I believe and what I wanted to hear. Thank you so much. I think I want to emphasize that I feel very lucky because I know I'm sitting with 2 of the most manually able interventional.
Thank you so much for saying that.
No.
I hope
Omar, I've seen you, and I've seen you in Cairo. I've seen Hani live, but I've seen you in Cairo. I was standing there in the cath lab, and I know what you can do. And again, I come back and
Thank you very much.
I know that the very able are always so modest, and you were generous with
That's
your
very
knowledge.
kind of you. Thank you
you so much, and thank you very much.
You
so much.
Enjoy the rest of the Congress.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant, beautiful.